In December of 2020, I received an email. This email triggered a series of events which ended up with me, Ben, and Doug travelling to South Africa for just over 3 weeks while in the midst of a pandemic in order to join a paleontological expedition deep into the heart of the vast Karoo semi-desert. Here, we spent our time contending with the local wildlife, the elements, and gravity as we tried to find and excavate fossils dating back to over 200 million years ago. This adventure took us all across the country, from Johannesburg and the Cradle of Humankind, down to Clarens on the border with Lesotho to find dinosaur footprints, and still further south to farms in the barren wilderness of the Karoo where Gorgonopsians and Dinocephalians lurk. We made some absolutely incredible discoveries on this expedition and learned a great deal along the way. So what was this email that started it all? Well, it was sent by Dr. Julian Benoit, the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, who has done a great deal of research on all sorts of inhabitants of the Karoo supergroup, from Gorgonopsians to Thrinaxodon, and even the potentially venomous Euchambersia. Julian explained who he was and that he was aiming to run a field school for paleontology students of the university to be taken out into the field to experience what this aspect of the science is like. And then he made an offer that was too good to refuse. In order to make this field trip a possibility, he asked for our help in raising enough money through crowdfunding, and then said if we were successful in reaching the goal, we would both be invited to fly out to South Africa and join the team on the expedition. How could we possibly say no? After sorting out the details and organising everything, the crowdfunding campaign was launched a few months later and was a tremendous success, with more than enough being raised to cover all the costs of such an undertaking. Thanks to the immense generosity of our wonderfully selfless subscribers, Doug, myself and 14 others were going to be able to experience the thrills of fieldwork in the South African Karoo. Thrinax 2021 was going to happen. We were incredibly excited. Well, one of us was.
I can't believe you brought me to this place. I can't. South Africa? I didn't want to do Isle of Wight.
It's going to be a great time.
So it was that in mid-August of 2021, we found ourselves boarding a plane bound for the Southern Hemisphere. After a sleepless overnight journey on the plane, we arrived in a city like no other, Johannesburg. We were immediately taken to the University of the Witwatersrand to see the collections of the Evolutionary Studies Institute, an unbelievable experience that instantly got us excited for the incredible fossils we would find, in case you couldn't tell from the fact that I could not stop smiling the entire time. Seeing those boundless rows of storage shelves and cabinets packed with stunning Karoo fossils from the Permian, Triassic and Jurassic periods was a fantastic introduction to the prehistory of this remarkable country. Later that day, after being introduced to the wonderful team members of Thrinax 2021, we were then granted access into the ESI's prized possession, the hominid vault. Filled to the brim with bones, both fossil and recent, this room houses some of the most significant discoveries ever made in the history of study on human evolution, including the Taung child itself, the first ever Australopithecus to be discovered. It's a slight understatement to say that we had a good first day, and yet, somehow, our second was even better. On day 2, we journeyed to the Cradle of Humankind, the UNESCO World Heritage Site that includes caves from which fossil Australopithecines and members of our own genus have been recovered, and were invited by researchers to actually go down into Rising Star Cave itself, the system in which Homo naledi was found back in 2013, as well as another cavern known only as Cave 105, a site that has recently been identified as containing more hominid fossils. I don't know how to quite describe the feelings of utter awe and wonder that I experienced being in these places, knowing that only a few 100,000 years ago our ancient ancestors and relatives were roaming these lands and ending up down in these caves. It truly was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I honestly can't quite believe how lucky we were to be able to see the things we did. The next day though, it was time to get to work and start the expedition. After driving all day long, only stopping for a short hike to explore a dinosaur trackway, we reached the town of Oviston, our home for the next week. Based out of Oviston, over the next few days we travelled around to various farms as well as a nature reserve in order to prospect and excavate fossils. We had two main aims while we were here. Firstly, we wanted to extract a couple of associated Lystrosaurus fossils that had been identified on a previous field trip. And secondly, we wanted to try and locate the original type locality of the first fossil of the possibly venomous Thyracophalian Euchambersia. Only 2 fossils are known for this animal, both skulls lacking lower jaws, and the original place the first one was found has sadly been lost. Therefore, Julian, who has done quite a bit of research on this organism, was determined to find more. Unfortunately, neither of these aims went quite to plan. The excavation went quite horribly wrong, as you'll see, and we weren't able to find any more Euchambersia, but we still did do some useful science by determining where they probably didn't come from. Nevertheless, we still made some great discoveries, even getting to see the boundary between the Permian and the Triassic that marks the worst mass extinction event in the history of life. After this first week in the field, we then travelled with high hopes to our next locality, even further southwest. This was Combrinkskral, another farm on which even older Permian fossils have been found. Here, in this incredibly barren and dry landscape, utterly unlike anything I'd seen before, we again had two missions. One, we had to excavate the body of a Tapinocaninus fossil, a kind of large herbivorous dinocephalian, and two, we had to prospect the farmland for more evidence which could help to better define the stratigraphic boundary between two biozones in the mid-Permian. Yet again, we had more difficulties with the excavation, and sadly it ended up having to be abandoned by the end, but the prospecting was a bit more successful, with some pretty significant finds being made. It was on one of these days at Combrinkskral that we then met Professor Bruce Rubidge for the first time. The Rubidge family has a paleontological legacy in South Africa stretching back generations, with Bruce's grandfather Sydney also having made significant contributions to the field. It was an absolute honour to meet Professor Rubidge, and after leaving the Combrinkskral area a few days later, we then journeyed to Bruce's hometown of Graaff-Reinet. Here, we were taken to see the Rubidge collection on the nearby Rubidge family farm, another astonishing collection of fossils quite unlike any other I've ever seen. All sorts of holotype specimens, the fossils that the species names are based on, are on display here. There was just too much to look at and explore. It was fascinating to see and again gave me that wonderful feeling of being reminded just why I love the science of paleontology so much. Bruce also took us to see the Kitching Fossil Exploration Centre in another small town nearby, as well as explaining to us his brilliant ideas for paleotourism projects in South Africa, a very worthwhile effort that we actually got to help him with. That then marked the end of the field trip, but Doug and I still had a few more days left after our return to Johannesburg. So the day before we left for the UK, we travelled to Swang Crater, the site of a meteorite impact that struck the Earth about 220,000 years ago, and actually got to hike around the rim and down into the crater itself, another incredible experience. And then our journey was over. We returned to the UK after another long sleepless flight, and that pretty much brings us up to where we are now, self-isolating for a fun-filled 10 days in a hotel near Heathrow. We set out on this expedition with the aim of not only hopefully making some important new discoveries about the paleontology of the Karoo supergroup and the extinct fauna that once lived there, but also to give a unique, inside perspective of what paleontological fieldwork is really like. Granted, such work will always vary depending on the places you go and the fossils you're looking for, but we feel like we've been able to capture a pretty good impression of what this aspect of the science is like and the successes, failures and unexpected changes of plans that are involved. But more than that, it's clear that fieldwork is about the people you do it with. A paleontological expedition is only going to be as good as those involved, and in this case I'm incredibly grateful for the team members of Thrinax 2021, a group of highly passionate and knowledgeable people who helped to make this such a fantastic experience for me and Doug. As we learned, there's nothing that helps people bond quite like shared mutual suffering, as well as talking about fossils. Our South African adventure was an absolutely awesome experience, and I feel so lucky to have been given this unbelievable opportunity. Thank you again so much to all those who donated and made this possible, and to Julian for inviting us to be a part of this in the first place. And don't worry, this definitely won't be the only video we make about our travels. We're planning to release 9 more videos about what we got up to, covering in much more detail the day-to-day events of the experience, as well as the prehistoric animals we encountered. Still to come in these next videos are exclusive interviews with paleontologists, amazing looks at fossil collections, and a documentation of Doug's alarming descent into madness. It's going to be a great time, you're not going to want to miss them.